Your Best Manager, episode 55. Do this before you even think about hiring another employee. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Your Best Manager podcast, featuring interviews with senior managers and leadership experts, as well as practical advice for first-time managers. And after today's show, be sure to hop over to yourbestmanager.com and check out the free management course, Fully Engaged in 10 Days, where you will learn 3 critical components to increasing employee engagement on your team. Have fun! Hey, this is Jamie Newman here, and thanks for tuning into another episode of the Your Best Manager podcast. Now, as a quick reminder and review, we kicked off a series a few weeks ago on the fundamentals of management, where every Monday I'm talking through the most critical components of managing people because, well, if you want to become a great leader, you need to be able to execute on the fundamentals of management. So this series really kicked off in episode 46, where I proposed 3 questions that you must answer if you want to lead others. And those questions are, what do you want? What's in your way? And then what are you going to do about it? Essentially, the message was that if you are serious about growing your career, serious about developing your leadership skills, and pursuing something of value through your profession, then you need to get serious about what you want and what actions you're going to take to develop yourself, because leadership is hard. And then from there, it's about understanding your number one responsibility as a manager, which I suggest in episode 49, that your number one responsibility above and beyond caring for your people is to produce results. And this led us into episode 52, which was last Monday, where I talked about how to actually execute on that number one responsibility, which is ultimately about striking a balance between driving results and caring for your people. And my solution to this balancing act is to lead shoulder to shoulder on the front lines, where you are way more exposed, but where you can be an example, where you can coach by showing your team how, where you can set expectations, where you can drive results, and then where you can build relationships. And guess what? While the series is about the fundamentals of management, well, this core fundamental, this ability to execute on your primary responsibility, sure, it's the foundation of good management, but it's also one of the keys to success as a leader. You see, while you need to be a good manager before you can become a good leader, executing on this particular responsibility is leadership. And you'll see this as the series continues, which today we're getting into some more practical manager skills. But as you'll see, well, you actually develop leadership skills through honing and practicing the manager skills that we're going to be talking about. Because as this series progresses, we're going to be talking about things like hiring, interviewing, running a meeting, measuring performance, setting objectives, utilizing one-on-one meetings, terminating employees, and many other topics that are all just about, well, hey, this is your job as a manager. That's what we're talking about. These are the manager skills. But when you do these things well, or I guess maybe I'll put it this way, you can become a great leader based on how you do these things. This is why you'll see all those manager versus leader infographics, videos, and articles plastered all across LinkedIn, because a leader's job and a manager's job is actually the same, but the way that they execute is different. And so I'm merely suggesting through this series that you can't skip the manager skills in your effort to become a better leader. You see, if you don't know how to hire people, if you don't know how to run a meeting, it doesn't matter how inspiring or caring you are, you're not going to be an effective leader. Because back to my first point, your number one responsibility is results. And those results dictate the opportunities that you actually have to develop and lead your people. All right, so I said that was going to be a quick review, and that was anything but quick. So if you haven't listened to episodes 46, 49, or 52 yet, make sure you check those out to get caught up on this series, because they are foundational to what we are talking about. And with all that said, let's move into the topic for today, which is hiring. Well, actually, we're not even going to get to the fun part of hiring today because, as you know, my background is in recruiting and human capital consulting, which means I've got probably way too much that I want to say on this topic. And so what we're actually going to do today is we're going to talk about when to hire and really how to make the decision to hire someone and what to do before you even think about posting a job ad or clearing your schedule for interviews. Of course, it's not as sexy as recruiting and hiring, but hey, if you're someone who loves planning, well, maybe this is actually sexier than recruiting. Who knows? Here's the thing. Hiring someone isn't cheap, it isn't easy, and it doesn't always make your problems go away. But when your team is falling behind and when opportunities seem just out of reach, hiring someone can seem like a quick fix, and it can seem like just the thing that you need. But as a manager, it's not just your job to manage the people you have. It's also your job to make good decisions about when, how, and who to bring onto your team. So, to help you with this decision-making process, I'm going to present 10 questions that you should ask before you make the decision to bring on a new employee. Now, if you're driving right now, you're not going to be able to write these questions down, but I've got a free PDF that you can download from the show notes, which will be at yourbestmanager.com/55 for episode 55, of course. So yourbestmanager.com/55, and you can go grab that PDF download, which is basically like it's a checklist of the 10 questions, and then there's spots for you to write notes so that you can, if you're thinking about hiring someone or thinking that you need to hire someone, you can go through this checklist, print it out, and hopefully it'll help. Anyway, so these are the questions that the best managers answer before they even think about their recruiting strategy. These are the questions that, when they're not answered, lead to so much wasted time and sometimes, often actually, wasted money. You miss these questions, you could actually hurt your business and your team. Here they are. Question number 1. What's the business problem? Now, maybe this one seems obvious, but while you may be tempted to just start complaining about how you and your employees are overworked and your team is understaffed and you just can't keep up and it's not fair, blah, 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 I want you to think about the business objectively. Take your opinions out of it, take your relationships out of it, take what you know about your employees out of it, and look at the business. And there are 2 types of problems that you're looking for here. The first type of problem, something is not happening that should be happening, or something that should not be happening is happening. So really this is an action-based and this is a clear problem, and this always has an impact on the customer. The customer either isn't getting great service, isn't getting a great product, isn't showing up, like the customer doesn't exist, the customer's not there, or the customer isn't returning. So the first type of problem is customer impact or about your customer. The second type of problem is the lost opportunity problem, the we're leaving money on the table problem. We could be doing X or we should be doing X, but we can't get to it. So the problem is a lost opportunity. So that's question 1. What is the business problem? Question number 2, what happens if this business problem is not addressed? This question focuses on the implications of the business problem we just talked about. What does it actually mean? Who else does it impact? What other problems could arise if this one isn't taken care of? The purpose of asking this second question is to validate the urgency and priority or the seriousness of the problem. You see, it's easy to say, well, if our customers aren't getting a quality product, then they will never come back and we're all going to go out of business. But that's not really the point. The point is to get specific on the details. To understand what this means, if your product is cheap, quality may not be that big of an issue. I mean, think about the toys that you get at McDonald's in your Happy Meal. The quality isn't great. They're going to break eventually. They don't always work as the package describes, but customers are barely even paying for it. Actually, that's not true. I think it's like $3 if you're actually buy a toy from McDonald's on its own. But the point is, it's a cheap toy. You don't expect the toys to last. You don't expect them to be high quality. So if your quality's low, but you have a cheap product, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Even though you may feel bad about it, and hey, maybe you want to improve quality. But what I'm saying is, this question, what happens if the problem is not addressed? You're looking at the seriousness of the problem. And here's another example to help. Let's say that when a customer calls you or calls your company, you want them to have a wait time you want that wait time to be under 60 seconds. However, right now, customers, when they call in, are waiting on the line for 90 seconds. Well, sure, 60 seconds sounds nice, but how many customers are you actually losing from those additional 30 seconds? I mean, sometimes I call customer service lines and I wait 10 to 30 minutes. So again, the point here is not to say your problem isn't important. is to determine how big of a problem are you actually facing? What's the priority and what's the seriousness of it? Which leads us to question number 3. Am I getting the most out of my team? I've already said this, but hiring isn't easy, it isn't cheap, and it isn't a quick fix. As a manager, it's your job to identify business problems and find solutions. And the first solution needs to come from evaluating the performance and potential of your current team. To use some really simple math here, and I know that things don't work out this clear, but if you had 4 employees performing at 75% of their capabilities, helping these employees become fully engaged and 100% productive would yield the same productivity as hiring a new employee. See how that works? But sometimes it's even simpler than that. Sometimes small tweaks, small changes in operating rhythm, or sometimes a little training can actually go a long way in solving big problems. So this third question, am I getting the most out of my team, is really about looking internally. The first question we asked was all about the actual business problem from the customer's perspective typically. But now I'm asking you to look inside, and that means evaluating your own performance as well. Question number 4. What would I do if I couldn't hire someone new? This question continues that internal evaluation. Well, what if hiring just wasn't an option? What if you didn't have the budget to bring on a new employee? What if the person you were looking for, that ideal perfect candidate, doesn't actually exist? Or again, that perfect candidate doesn't exist at the budget you have. You see, it's sometimes really easy for managers to look for problems, to identify challenges and identify obstacles. And that's a good thing. Managers need to be able to uncover problems. But sometimes it becomes more about finding reasons why something will fail versus why something can succeed. So why not look specifically for opportunities? Why not look for strengths to leverage? Why not look for reasons why you and your team can do more, can achieve more, can solve whatever business problem you're facing? So the question here is, if you had to solve the business problem you're facing without hiring a new employee, what would you do? It's time to get creative. Question number 5. If I already had the person I want, what would they be doing right now? This is another one of those questions that probably seems obvious. Well, of course, if I had the person I wanted to hire, they'd be working right now. They'd be on the phones, or they'd be on the production floor, or they'd be serving customers. There's a million things I'd have them doing. This question, however, is designed to make you think about workload. How much time and how much work is required to solve the business problem? This accomplishes a couple things. First of all, it's yet another question that really makes you think about whether or not you actually need this person. But this is also a question that can help you decide on the level of individual you need. Do you need a full-time, high-paid expert with tons of experience? Do you need a part-time employee, or do you need a short-term specialized contractor? Question number 6. Who will train this person? One of the most annoying parts of bringing on a new employee is the distraction to the team. If you have employees who aren't really into training, they may see the new addition as an interruption, as a distraction, as something that throws them off their game. But worse than that, some of your team members may actually love training and be excited to help the new guy out, which can be a problem because instead of your top performers performing, they're now swiveling their chairs away from their customers, away from their computer screens to focus on teaching and training. And so there are really 2 purposes for this question. First of all, is the distraction and the training time required worth the increased productivity of the new hire? But secondly, do you have a training plan in place? Do you have someone on your team who knows how to coach from the hip, coach through shadowing? Can you, and I guess the other side is, can you make the trainee productive? So this question, who will train the person, is designed to make you think about the entire training process and how that's actually going to work and how that's going to impact the business problem that we talked about in question number 1. Question 7, how long can I wait? This question actually goes back to question number 4. What if I couldn't hire someone? You see, hiring doesn't happen overnight. You need to consider time spent on building a job description, on sourcing candidates, on interviewing, on training and onboarding. If it's going to take 3 months for a new hire to be fully functional, can you wait 3 months? This is actually the first question that actually starts taking us toward the sexy part of actually bringing someone on board and actually doing the fun part of recruiting. because it's designed to help you start thinking about how to find the talent that you need. Perhaps you need to look at former employees who can be brought up to speed quickly. Maybe you can consider promoting someone from within, or find a team member from another department that can help you out. This question is all about urgency. How long can you wait? Question number 8. How much will this cost? Hiring isn't cheap, and I'm not just referring to salary, although that is something to consider right out of the gate. Good managers make wise decisions when it comes to hiring. And it's these types of wise decisions that create a well-balanced team, which allows the team to thrive and ultimately shows leadership. Remember how I said effectively executing on manager skills will help you build leadership skills? Making a good hiring decision, knowing when to hire and when not to hire, will help you build the right team. The right team that will produce results. The right team that will grow and develop. You see, you put an okay leader on an understaffed or an overstaffed team, and they may struggle. But if you put an okay leader on a great team, well, they're in a much better position to succeed. And half of leadership is about making good decisions that put you and your team in a position to succeed. Great leaders aren't just the ones that overcome crazy problems. Great leaders sometimes don't have problems because they solve them before they become problems. And that all comes down to making good decisions in the first place. So let's think about the cost. The first place to start is actually back at the business problem, and it's actually talking about the cost of not hiring someone. So how much money or how much does it cost you if you do not hire somebody? If you do not solve the business problem? And get specific. Find dollar amounts. Will it cost $60,000 this year if you do not solve the problem? How much will it cost over the next 5 years? What's the lost opportunity cost if you don't hire somebody? Now, and of course, this may seem obvious, but the point here is that if your business problem costs your company, say, $60,000, and you hire a $60,000 employee, it's not a good decision to hire that person. See, there are hard costs and soft costs when it comes to hiring. Hard costs are the things that you can see and measure directly. They include salary, bonuses, recruiting fees, equipment such as laptops, phones, expenses. And soft costs are those things that cost money but aren't so clear. They include low productivity during onboarding. They include the cost of time to interview candidates instead of focusing on other aspects of your job. They include time spent managing and training employees instead of focusing on other aspects of your job. Potentially, even a soft cost could be an impact to customer service issues that come from a new employee learning the ropes, so to speak. So the whole point of this question number 8, how much will it cost, is not just a figure of the dollar value, but to think, is this a good business decision? Does it make business sense? Is it going to help or hurt the business from an actual dollar standpoint? All right. Like, are you going to recoup the cost of recruiting? I guess that's another way you could put it. Anyway. All right, cool. Question number 9. What options do I have internally? All right. Time for some practical stuff. I shouldn't say practical. This is all practical, but time for some fun recruiting strategy stuff. So at this point, it's clear you need to bring on a new employee. You know what you need. You can justify the cost. You're ready. Well, what are your options? What kind of referrals can you drive from your team members internally? Who from your HR team can support you? Are there any superstars in other departments who are looking for a change? Are there any team members who are ready for a promotion soon? It's sometimes easy to just say, all right, I need someone new. Let's call the recruiting company or let's throw up a job posting. And I want to plead with you, don't do it before you look internally. And I'm going to say this as a public service announcement from recruiters everywhere. One of the most frustrating aspects of being a professional recruiter is when you work your tail off for days or weeks sometimes, identify a great candidate, go through a complete screening process, and then find out that there was someone internally all along that could have just slid over in the first place and filled that role. So please look internally before you look externally, which of course brings us to question number 10. What options do I have externally? And this is the last question. If you need to look outside of your company, what options do you have? Are there past applicants you can look through? Are there internal recruiters in your company who can hop on the job boards or hop on LinkedIn to source potential candidates? Do you have the resources and time to source and recruit yourself? Does your company have relationships with local recruiting firms that have a good track record? I mean, ultimately, this question is, where is your ideal candidate and how are you going to find them? And that's the last question of the 10 questions that you need to look at and answer before you even think about hiring somebody. And yes, it takes answering all 9 of those questions before a good manager even gets to the point of thinking about putting up a job posting, which is kind of nuts. But from there, guess what? You get to have fun and go recruit somebody. And hopefully it's a pretty easy process now that you have a full, clear idea of what you need and why you need it. And so right now it's time for you to get the approvals you need, put together a job description, and get started finding your next great candidate. Okay, so there's a lot in those 10 questions. And I've put a list in PDF form that you can download and utilize for the next time you're thinking about hiring somebody. And you can get that over at yourbestmanager.com/55. And while we've covered a lot here, I do want you to recognize that this first step is absolutely worth the 30-minute exercise that it takes to go through all 10 questions. For starters, if you want to be a better manager, and I've already said this, you need to be able to make wise decisions. And wise decisions come from analyzing problems, considering solutions, and evaluating your options. Beyond this, if you have an internal approval process before you're even able to hire someone, these questions help you build that case so that when you sit down in your boss's office to tell him or her that you need to hire someone new and you need a budget for it, well, at this point, you've covered every angle and you're able to talk about the impact and opportunities for the business, not just your emotional state because you're tired and a new hire is going to make you less tired. And finally, when you ask all 10 of these questions, you won't waste your time or money. You'll know exactly what you need and how to get it. You'll have evaluated all your options and either decided to hire a new employee to better support your team, which when done well can improve team performance, team morale, and ultimately create new opportunities for your current team. But you may also decide through this process that you and your team are better served by banding together and overcoming the obstacle or the business problem together, which shows trust, builds camaraderie, and again, results in improved team performance and ultimately new or more opportunities for your staff to develop and grow their careers, which is what you want to do as a leader anyway. All right, so that's everything for today. Next Monday, we're going to be talking about the next step of hiring, which is about building a job description. And so I'll talk about what works, what doesn't work, and what the biggest mistake is that most managers make when they create a job posting. Thanks for listening. All right, everyone, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Now hop over to yourbestmanager.com and take advantage of the free tools, resources, and training which I've created exclusively for you, the next generation of leaders. Oh, and have fun.